Welcome to Complicated Opportunities, a Cosmere RPG podcast with a couple of GMs. This week, we're going to take a break from some interviews for a few and actually talk through some of the game mechanics that we have wanted to discuss. So Irving came up with this idea, so I will go ahead and turn it over to him and let him start us off.
Yeah, so my idea was to talk about travel scenes, which are oftentimes very boring, and this was spurred on by a conversation I had with my World of Warcraft guild. A lot of them play TTRPGs, and they were discussing like, oh, how do I make this travel interesting for higher level D&D characters? And so naturally through the course of talking about that conversation, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, how do I feel about travel in the Cosmere RPG? And long story short, I think it actually is pretty good just because of the endeavor and event systems. I think as long as you can string together a couple of endeavors, a combat, and have an event, you probably have an interesting travel scene. It also doesn't need to be a combat; it could be a conversation, like talking to a someone who's charging a toll over a bridge or something. But I think it's an interesting discussion in how we choose to handle the boring minutia of existing in a world in a TTRPG.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually agree that the endeavors, combats, conversations, all of that can definitely help. I think a good example of that is actually in, is it chapter 3 of Stonewalkers, where it's like, you have 23 days where you're going to be traveling to Rathalas, and then lo and behold, when you settle in for camp, there's this guy just hanging out in the background, and then it leads to a conversation with him. I definitely think that's something that can easily be replicatable while you're running your own sessions, your own campaigns, etc.
Yeah. I do like the sort of spice they add to the travel in Stonewalkers. It's oftentimes used as like, hey, what do you do like at camp for downtime during it? Which is also another thing you can do during travel is explore downtime activities. I would say like I wish it was a bit more eventful, at least the trip to Rathalas, because that feels like a big deal. Especially early on, that could be something that like pads out the gameplay a little bit to add more to the adventure, which already has these like really strong scenes it's built around. But ultimately, whatever you do, it's oftentimes described as a pillar of gameplay. You have role playing, combat, and exploration. Well, how do you make the exploration interesting? And giving game rules and a challenge that requires dice rolling is really where you generate interest. So I know for me, my first home session started off with travel. They're going from the headquarters of the Veden Church, or not, I think it's just the Voron Church, which are like in the mountains for some reason, apparently, and going down to Vedenar, which is a port city. Well, that's a pretty large distance. So I'm like, all right, this takes you a couple of weeks. We're going to do an endeavor. And part of that is like, you need to find a camp. You need to keep yourself on this path or navigate issues in the road. And I have like a set, like, it's not necessarily a standard endeavor of, oh, once they get this many successes, they're done, they arrive. It's more, I'm keeping track of like results and, at 2 failures, oh, this combat happens. At, the 3rd or 4th success, this like wandering merchant encounter or this helpful person they meet, just trying to spice in little things to add to that travel.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's definitely a way to do it. I think you had mentioned the events as well. So like you could always have an event in the background where it's, if they get so many opportunities, they get like some kind of boon where they, instead of entering in a combat, they reach the merchant where they can pick up an item or something they've been looking for. Or like they run across someone that's able to train one of them in like a goal that they had. So they're out and run into a wandering group of people that happen to have a shard bearer trainer or something. But then if they reach like too many complications, then now they encounter a hostile group that might have a shard bearer in it or something like that. Where it gives you a lot of like yes and no but kind of introductions that you can use for a good narrative piece to make that travel seem more important. Because even thinking about the Rathalas chapter where it's like, they're going to go in and they don't know a lot of what's going on. So like hypothetically, say they're traveling to like the Everstorm just hit and they were on a trip to Alethkar. Like when we get in the books, Alethkar is basically like it's not really a war zone, but it's definitely been overtaken by an unmade. Singers are starting to take over the city. You might not know that. It's just random Joe Schmo that's like trying to escape from one place to another. And then if they roll really well in the endeavor or hit a certain number of opportunities, they might be able to get a heads up. Otherwise, like if they don't, now they're going to approach it and find out they're entering an occupied city. That's a much bigger deal than like you can kind of set that up where it's like they either kind of have an advantage going in and can plan accordingly, or they are completely surprised because they didn't roll very well going into it.
Yeah. And so something that comes to my mind when we talk about like what advantages or disadvantages the players have is how you set your DCs,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big part of the travel sort of endeavor and event system too, is how difficult should things be. And I think for a lot of like newer GMs, it's pretty intimidating to just like set difficulties. There's good guidance, you have the breakpoints where like every 5 they give a different adjective to describe how difficult it is. So like 15 is average difficulty, 20 is hard, 25 is harder, 30 is impossible. Not sure if Cosmere RPG uses that exact same scale, but build from.
Yeah, the chart's pretty similar. I think 25 is basically where it's kind of like, okay, this is still doable. 30, like, not happening.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the highest at level, like at tier 1 that you can get your bonus to is 7.
I think so. It's either 6 or 7.
Yeah, at level 3, if you're a scholar, you can have a +7 in a skill.
Yeah.
So at tier 1, 25 is functionally impossible. You need the one perfect roll to get it. And generally, if you're sitting there and you're like, all right, I want to make this roll impossible, tell them no. Tell them they shouldn't roll it. That's my advice.
I do agree with that.
There are like, and use your best judgment. If you want there to be the barest sliver of a chance, then that's a time where it's like, it's okay. Sure, you can have one, like they need to roll a natural 20 or a 20 or a 19 and they get it. But other than that, maybe you shouldn't allow them to roll that skill. Now, if you like 20, I think is a fair number. Like if you want to make something hard and unlikely, set it at a 20. They'll still make it, dice math, like what is that? 20% of the time?
Something like that.
Assuming they have a +5 modifier, so they're doing something they're competent at.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty straightforward, at least to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that like, am I going to come up with the most creative ways to do that? Probably not, but I do think this system does a great job of setting you up to where, like, if you want to set up having that endeavor, having the events, like it gives you a very good mechanical way to do it other than just you're walking down the hallway and you hear a creak. What do you do? Like, because, like it definitely sets up like, hey, there's forward momentum. There's a little bit of urgency to it. But it gives you plenty of pivot points as a GM too, where it's like, hey, I want to show off this, like creature that I found while I was scrolling through the world guide, or I want to set this plot hook where this combat might not be a big deal right now, but there's a plot hook that comes from the combat that they could pick up down the road when they get to the city. Like it just gives you a lot of really cool ways to pivot that are mechanically built into the game. But yeah, I think it is a piece that like one of the things I struggle with as a GM is most of my RPG experience comes from video games, not from TTRPGs. So like the travel part's the part that always frustrates us in a video game, right? Like when you're playing Elden Ring, Final Fantasy, whatever, it's like I've got to get from point A to point B, and I just want to get from point A to point B. That's why fast travel exists in video games. But like that's not necessarily. I mean, it kind of could be a thing in your game, but I think it's a cool part where you can let some stuff breathe. You can let those character moments happen where you're not gonna. No matter what happens in it, it's not gonna like completely derail a campaign that you have with goals to get to certain plot points, but that's where a lot of the role play can come in. And honestly, that could even give you ideas for how to handle a situation in like the little town you've developed or the city you're having them go to, where something might come from the conversations that the PCs have, even that you can then weave in later.
So let's sort of brainstorm 5 roles that make sense for an endeavor.
Hmm.
That, let's not go with the most common. So like survival's out.
Okay,
Survival is the easiest skill to use in an endeavor, or a travel endeavor. I feel like.
for sure.
Um, what's a skill not survival that you call for?
Yeah, I mean, let's see, I could potentially call for a leadership role, like who's going to take the
Okay.
lead to set the team up for what we're going
So
to be
like
doing to set camp.
team morale for the travel.
Yep.
Almost. Okay. I like it. So we have one leadership. For me, I think a combo, so one that's a choice of agility or athletics. There's a piece of terrain that is difficult to travel, be it quicksand or a large like rock slide, and you need to navigate that swiftly. I'd call for agility or athletics tests from the players.
Yeah. Um, let's see, and then like so hypothetically, say something came from that, you could even go then into like give me a discipline test to see how you recover from that, like because what you were
Discipline was
trying
the
to
next
do.
one I was going to call for. There you go. You
See,
got me.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like a discipline test, or well, I don't know. I'll try not to keep going. So,
Well, no. So we have 3. We have leadership for morale, agility, athletics for difficulties, discipline. You said for like recovering from any difficulties in the road or like a failed roll. I'd also probably call for discipline for just staying focused.
yeah,
You know, there's also lore. Do you remember the maps you've studied? That's like that can be kind of tied in with survival, but like that's another way to get a different type of skill in there. I think a lore test makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
What would your next pick be? What's number 5?
Well, so like hypothetically, let's say, so from Lord, you're trying to figure that out. So now it's how are you wanting to approach? So like, let's say they've been rolling well, right? So now you're using that map, you're getting ready to approach. Like if we're looking for the 5th one to be the final, then or it could be multiple because then it's do you want to do a stealthy approach? So then I would ask for a stealth test. But if not, like why don't you do a deduction test or a perception test to figure out like what the right approach would be?
I mean, I
Um,
think stealth is a brilliant one to ask for in travel because maybe they want to go unnoticed. The Fellowship is trying to avoid the eye of the Crabane while traveling towards Moria.
mhm. Yeah.
So that's a good example of an option for stealth. Also, deduction works, and those are all examples of abilities that I'd probably set at like whatever I want my average DC to be. So be it that range of like 14 to 16. That would be my average difficulty I'd want to set.
Yeah, like I'd probably set the rock slide up a little higher,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Rock slide could be higher.
stealth would
The
be higher.
stealth could be higher.
Discipline might even be a 12. Like just like how are
Discipline
you
might be an
shaken
easy
from
one
it?
for sure.
Yeah. Lore same like because if you have 4 people in your party, like between the 4 of you, did one of you remember like what the map looked like and if you've got thrown off track or not? So like
Now
that one I might
that
set a little lower.
that hints at something. It's a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate when a player fails a roll, and then another player at the tables will like, "Well, can I just do it?"
No,
And it's
that
like,
drives me
no,
crazy too. Now sometimes I
no.
might like
If
for
that was their
stealth I might ask.
contribution,
Yeah, for stealth, I might ask for a group roll because it's like, hey,
oh
you got
yeah,
there, and then also, but then how I handle that is I'll kind of like allow the high and the lows to get thrown out. So I'll set an average DC in my head where it's like, say I'm setting the DC at 16. Like if, and I'm going to do rough math because I am not going to sit here and calculate it out, but it's like if the majority of the party rolls above a 16, like I'll basically let the 3 that rolled above a 16 save the one goober that rolled like a 3 as long like basically let them cover and like hurry up and grab them and pull them out of the way because they stepped on a stick or something like that.
oh, see, I do the math. I add them up.
Oh yeah, I'm too impatient for that.
I maybe it's just the way my brain works, but like dividing by 4 or 5 is never that hard.
Yeah.
You always know about where the answer is.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. So actually, here's a question for you that maybe as a new GM I'm doing wrong. A lot. Sometimes I'll set DC by vibes. Like I don't go in with a definite like, hey, I'm gonna do a 14 at this, a 16 at this, a 12 at this. I kind of base it. I'll base it on how the endeavor has been going.
Yeah.
Like if they've had like two failures, then it's like, hey, it doesn't make sense for all of a sudden a 14 to get you through this because you've screwed up two or three times on the way up to this. So
Hmm.
then I actually will change my DC in the middle of an endeavor.
Yeah. So welcome to advanced GMing, where we lie about how we set things, just like how they lied to you in chemistry class.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that is something that I do. You know, there are times where I don't have an idea for a role, and then a player suggests something, and in my head I'm just like, all right, that's easy, sweet, roll it. And then it's like, well, they got a 12. Yeah, 12's fine. Uh, in this case, or you know, if they get pretty much always 11 and lower is a failure in my head.
Yeah, unless it's something that's just super, super simple. Like 12 is kind of the base DC I'll set for
Yeah,
most skills.
if it's that simple, I'll just ask them not to roll.
True. Sometimes
But
I feel like people just want to roll to roll. And I'm like,
oh,
you know
for
what?
sure.
Like, if the player's wanting to, I'll do it. But yeah, like, otherwise, I'll be like, no, you don't even need to roll for that. And then see what they think.
Hmm.
I've actually had one or two when I say that. They're like, but I kind of want to roll. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, roll.
And
You're the one
let
taking the
yourself
risk here.
have the opportunity for failure. There you go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
Uh,
yeah, please,
yeah, yeah.
complication.
No, very frequently I don't have real hard numbers set anymore. It's just a like, all right, what's the vibe of this action? Are you doing it competently or are you doing it in a silly fashion? If it's a silly fashion, the DC's higher. You know, if
I
I think
think
they're
that's
not being
actually
serious.
Well, and I think that actually is a good point where when you're setting a or when you're playing and somebody asks something that is just it doesn't make sense in the scene. Like I saw Matt Mercer do this when I was watching campaign 1 of Critical Role where like clearly the player was just being antagonistic. And so he was like, cool, go ahead and roll. It didn't matter what they rolled. You could tell he was going to be like, cool, not only do you fail, you also lose this and lose this. Like, he was like, it almost felt like a punishment, but I actually agreed with him in that moment because it was like, clearly that player was just messing with the GM. And it's like, guys, we're all here to have fun. I do not do hey, it's GM versus players mentality
Yeah.
at all. um, that's just a personal choice that I take. Some tables do like that, and I think if a game can be for that if you set those expectations. But the average game, I don't feel like that. But so if somebody's trying to do something absolutely ridiculous, yeah, I'll set a pretty high DC.
Oh, man, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, there is, and I'm like, I'm not going to go down the rabbit
So
hole of like player ethics and stuff. But
well, we're here. We're here. We're gonna be in the rabbit hole. Um, if you feel yourself in the position to do that, maybe you need to take a step back and talk to the person.
oh yeah, for sure.
You
His
know,
his instance, I
his
mean,
was
like
live, and I think I know which one you're talking about.
oh yeah, I mean
Um,
it was the Orion problem. Like
yeah,
that was who he was doing it to. It had been a 10 game buildup where I'm sure there were conversations that happened on the side. So like would I ever get that antagonistic in one session? No. But like if someone has clearly been not paying attention to what the party is wanting to do, not paying attention or not communicating, like as a GM, I would have stepped in before that to have a check in offhand. Which that's actually something I've just learned about my GM style in general is after every session I play, I check in with people, even if it's a one shot, because I'm always wanting
dude,
to get
you
better.
check in a lot. Pretty.
Yeah, I do.
I get to report from you afterwards of like, all right, this is how people are feeling. This is what happened. I'm like, yeah, it sounds. I mean, it sounds good to me, buddy. Like,
Yeah, like sometimes I can tell from the session where I don't need to. Like I'm not doing it as much now, but I'm
yeah,
sure some of that was the new. Like if my advice, if you're a new GM, which hopefully people listening to this are trying to GM for the first time because of the Cosmere RPG, like I definitely recommend checking in a good bit, especially if you're starting a long form campaign. And my situation with Stonewalkers was interesting because like I had like 3 or 4 players, but then we added 2 in between session 0 and session 1. So it's like we had people that got the Cliff Notes version of our session 0. So then I wanted to make sure, hey, one, what could I be doing better? Because this was my first like pre-written long-term campaign that I was GMing. So I want to
Yeah.
know, hey, how's it going? Now, am I going to do it every single time anymore with a one shot? No, I'm confident enough in what I'm doing where if I'm just doing a level 12 one shot because we all want to play with some high level radiance, right? Am I going to do a check-in after that? Probably not. But I'm always open to feedback. And that is actually something I would recommend to all GMs. Like a lot of us can vary, and I've already started to do it myself, and I'm only a little over a year into being a GM. Sometimes I can get stuck in my ways already. Make sure to stay open for feedback. Like other people have new ideas. It's okay to listen to them. You don't always have to take them, but it definitely is okay to listen to them.
Yeah.
That was a long
I mean, I
rant.
can get
Sorry.
behind. Nah, I don't think that's too long a rant. I think I get behind that implicitly. Um, but yeah, so like if you find yourself in that sort of position where you're just going to say no to somebody in that way, take a minute and think about it. It's okay to ask for a pause. You know, ostensibly we're all friends here and trying to have fun. So if you're clearly not having fun, what's up? Why are you stuck doing something you don't enjoy? And if you're a player, why do you feel you need to not play the game with other people? You know, if you're constantly trying to go the other way or do something not with the group, maybe like take a moment and ask like, okay, what am I doing and why are my desires not aligning with the group ones? And is that
Yep.
okay? Cuz like sometimes it is okay. Sometimes it's not. It's a tricky situation where it requires like maturity and thought on everyone's part. So take the time and try it. That's a slightly long rabbit hole for like, hey, we got some parts of the Endeavor set. We, you know, talked about 5 skills that we think are useful. Uh, if someone like tries to use intimidation in the wilderness with no one else around, I don't know what they're intimidating. Uh, it
But
probably is not okay. Like it's fine to say, hey, I don't think that role works here. Now, say you have an event going, and one of the events is they're waylaid by bandits. Maybe that starts as a conversation, and then intimidation is a more than fine roll.
yeah,
Uh, and what are some other events that you think you could do? I know, you know, it's Roshar, so there's always a high storm on the horizon, and more than likely there are some bandits on the road.
yeah. You could also, depending on when it takes place, but like Rashar is constantly war torn, right? There's only like 2 or 3 moments in Rashar's history where there's not an active war going on. So, like, what happens if you run across a group of refugees that there's their town? Like, if it's, we'll just go back to the Everstorm example. Like, the singers all reacted differently when they reawakened. Like, some of them did attack a village. So, like, what happens if you've got a group of refugees that come across? So, like, you could be, hey, we've got to try to get them to safety first, which now interrupts our travel. Like, or you've also got the option of like they're being chased by someone too. So now you also have to protect people, and you've got a group that's bearing down that could attack. So you might even have 2 events running at the same time.
Refugees was not something that had crossed my mind. Brilliant pull, because that just makes a ton of like logical sense to be on Roshar. Big fan. Gosh, what? So we have refugees, we have bandits, we have high storm. I think, you know, an event that's positive. Well, there's a wandering merchant. Who has like some specialist supplies. This could be a good time to add in a weapon with a unique trait. You know, maybe they have a short bow that has a bunch like a large panel on it, so it's defensive or something. Um,
Yeah, I
and that's
mean,
a
you
good
could
like
even,
opportunity for an interesting, just like slice of life piece of color to
yeah,
happen.
and I even like sprinkling in stuff like, so say you've got a scholar in your group or an artifabrian, like you run across a group, like a caravan that's just traveling to the war camps or something, and in that merchant caravan you could have like, hey, we've got this dude who's trying to craft this weird new fabrial. Like, so now you've got a plot hook for that artifabrian to have a conversation, maybe discover something. You could sneak in an item they didn't know was coming.
Ooh, you know, you could just steal whole cloth the Tet Rebin, get the cart out of the mud
Yeah,
encounter. That or
yeah,
like
yeah, absolutely.
little event. That is a good one. You know, obviously, if you're doing Stonewalkers, it's difficult to do that one again. But if you're not doing
Yeah,
Stonewalkers, there's a wine merchant with his cart and is Chull stuck in the mud. He's very attached to that cart. It's a fairly family heirloom. Um, you know. That's a
Yeah.
good it's a good call for another event tracker to like have happen. And events don't need to be these big sweeping things. They can be like small pluses or minuses that affect the story, you know. You fill them up by adding opportunities and complications generated by rolls. But you also don't have to. You could just fill them up with successes, which is something we
Yeah.
saw, you know, we were playing a little just one shot with somebody, and you know, through one of my choices, they were like, all right, this isn't going to contribute to the endeavor, but if you succeed, it contributes to the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was a really cool way to take that. That was something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool too.
The other thing you could do is like if you also add in like so like hypothetically say the endeavor's been going really well, getting them there, you could possibly pick up a companion for like a short-term NPC that joins the party. Or you could have a like depending on how the party interaction goes, you might have someone that gets like disgruntled with the group depending on what you all do, and then that's a good place to like bring them back around at some point where like they moved on but it was the Telltale games, they will remember that, and then when you get to the city they do something to sabotage you guys to be like haha screw you. Like there's so many different plot hooks you can add into those.
That's a very good point. Like taking that Telltale Games lesson of like text appears on the screen, blah blah blah. We'll remember that. Uh, Always do that in your RPGs. And in fact, I think that that's like culturally prevalent enough now that if you
Mm-hmm.
say that, your players will get the message of like, oh no, did we mess up? Uh,
Yep.
yeah, I think that's a very good call to reference the Telltale Games. Gosh, I played the Walking Dead one and the Game of Thrones one.
Yeah, those are. I think I played one chapter of the Batman one because that was like right when Telltale disappeared. Like I don't even think you can buy the Batman one anymore, but it was actually pretty good.
I didn't know they had a Batman
The
one.
Yeah,
Maybe Nikki
exactly.
has.
Yeah, exactly though, because it kind of disappeared, and I don't think you can buy it again, which is frustrating because it was actually pretty good. Just a shout out too for the handbook, just before I forget. There are some good, like there's an exploration endeavor that it mentions, and there might be some good things you can add there, for like they face a peril. It says a peril above and beyond the typical woes of wilderness survival. So it could be stuff where like half of your spheres got done, or like you've lost, like the endeavor took too long, so now you have a point of exhaustion.
Yeah,
Those are
a
things
point of
that
exhaustion. You could change the story. So like the endeavor I'm running currently that is kind of a two-part endeavor with an event. If it takes them what I so I'm set so they need 5 successes before 3 failures. If they fail it, they still arrive in the city, but the boat they were supposed to catch is gone. So they'll have to find another boat and actually work with their aliases because they are secret members of the what becomes known as the hierarchy. They're sort of the like intelligence CIA of the hierarchy,
nice.
going to deal with whatever mess is going on in Alethkar and why they've stopped paying taxes and who the heck this Sunmaker fella might be. He's not actually called the Sunmaker at this point, so just I'm in my head he's like Sadie's, and then I don't know if I'm gonna make him a Colin or something, or like try to think of a proto name for Colin.
I mean, you could, because where you could even set it up where Colin and Sadius, that's where those two houses came from.
Well, I think the idea is that all
The
of the
sons,
major
basically.
houses, because he supposedly has 10 sons, which in Roshar just means that like, oh, he might have like maybe he has 1 or 2 trueborn sons and the rest are adopted.
Yeah, because technically Kaladin is a Colin at the end of When in
Yeah,
Truth. Spoilers.
yeah. Well, is he still like? Does death? What does that even
Yeah,
have to?
that's
Did anyone
yeah.
officially ratify his being adopted by Dalinar? This is how you get
Questions for the
secession
back
wars,
half.
folks. Um,
That's right.
but yeah,
Who knows? The
so
Stormwall. The Stormwall might actually be a villain when we come back.
no, no.
I don't want him to be, but
Uh, what's his name? Like, what's his actual name? It's not. It's like
Dami.
Dami. Okay, I was gonna say it's not Dobby, but it's something close.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be. But yeah, to my point of like they are spies for the hierarchy, willing or not, going to figure out stuff. Oh yes, the 10 princedoms of Alethkar in the modern day supposedly like draw their lineage from the Sunmaker, and I bet a bunch of it's fake, just like people drawing their lineage from Charlemagne, or you know, I think Charlemagne tried to like say he's descended from Christ or something. Like there's always weird claims of like kingship,
Yep.
lots of divine right stuff. Uh, but
So let's see. So we've
yeah.
so we've got the Endeavor, we've got the event that's happening. Is there anything else that we wanted to highlight from that we could do in travel that we haven't already hit on?
No, so that kind of like covers the discussion I had with about travel with my guild, which was like, hey, how do you make it interesting and involve the players? In D&D it's a little more difficult because like they don't natively have the skill challenge system. That's something you have to like hack on and remember from 4th edition. Uh Maybe they've changed that in 2025 or 2024 D&D. I don't quite remember. But Cosmere has that natively. So
Yeah.
like the rules are there. There's no like, is it technically homebrew? It's just a like, yeah, these endeavors, which are just skill challenges, exist. And it's a way to basically roll dice in things that aren't combat or trying to persuade somebody. Uh, and I think that's good. I think it's good to actually add gamifying elements to something because then that opens up for improvisation and also just a baseline of rules in case you have questions or feel like, oh, is what I'm doing technically correct? Uh,
Yeah.
and that's why I wanted to talk about it in the lens of the Cosmere RPG, is because it's important to realize, like, oh, we have these rules that other people don't. And that is part of what makes this a good game, is that it has these important rules.
Absolutely. So do we want to do a Tales from the Table? We haven't done that in a minute.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a minute. I could do one in that. Hey, if you're at the beginning of a tier, maybe shift down combat difficulty because, at tier 1, 8 axe hounds is supposed to be a like normal encounter for your players. I almost TPK'd my party with 6. Uh,
Yeah.
and to be fair, they didn't build the most combat optimized characters except for Nikki. But it still was very deadly when it should not have been. And so I kind of came up with this idea that, hey, at the beginning of a tier, every difficulty is shifted one up. So easy becomes average, average becomes hard, hard becomes deadly, deadly, super deadly. Uh, and then at the end of a tier, every difficulty shifts down. So easy is very easy, average is easy, hard is average, deadly is hard, and then you'd need like a super deadly to be regular deadly. And so like that's my advice, is just, pay attention to when you're building your encounters, get a feel for it. If you want to use that as a guideline, what I just said, I kind of recommend it. So you don't accidentally TPK your players and have to come up with some very clever reasons why they're not dead. And also forget to add damage modifiers, which is my favorite thing to do when trying to save people's lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, so for me, we just finished chapter 3 of Stonewalkers, right? We had a lot of really cool things happen throughout that chapter that I hadn't thought about with the Radiance. So one of the things, like, we all think of, because the empowered condition is a thing when you swear an ideal, like, get a feel for your players and how they want to swear their ideals. And it was good because, like, where I do those check-ins in between, I've actually had 2 people that have bonded cryptics. Neither one of them, I actually haven't had a player swear an ideal yet in combat, which is interesting for me. Because I just assumed that's what everyone would want to do. Right now, I literally have a first ideal Stoneboard, 2 first ideal Lightweavers, and none of them have sworn it in combat. um, so, like, it's okay to do that. Because first off, remember, you're going to have 4 ideals, potentially. So, like, they might not swear the first ideal in combat, but they might swear the second ideal in combat. Or in an endeavor, or in a conversation even, where all of a sudden now they're getting advantage on every roll in the middle of a conversation. That could be a mechanically useful thing. But it's been interesting that all 3 of ours have happened during, like, well, one actually did it off screen. She did not want to swear the ideal in front of people because she was bonding a cryptic. She had just revealed a painful truth about herself, and she wanted to surprise everybody that she had access to the surges later, which is totally cool. And then I had one spoilers for chapter 3, but the one of them swore it during the conversation with the Grey Remnant. And then the other one did the book guidance thing where they bonded Poahu while they were talking to Tong. But yeah, so 3 straight ideals not happening in combat. And that's okay. Like, it just caught me off guard because when you read the rules, it like sounds awesome to do it while you're in the middle of combat.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I did.
yeah, I mean, that's what I would absolutely want to do. Like, let's be honest, I always build combat forward characters anyway. But yeah, so that was a pretty cool learning that worked out really well for our party, and I think everybody's pretty happy with so far. Don't get me wrong, I think during chapter 4, I already have one who's like ready to swear it whenever they want. One thing as a GM I do, little sidebar, is once someone's ready to swear the ideal, I let them choose when to do it necessarily. So like I kind of give them the signal, like, hey, you're ready. So if the moment feels right, go with it. I'll play off of that. Like you don't need me to tell you to do it in a moment. If you feel like the time's right, do it. And I think that's led to people being very happy while they swear the ideal. So
That's good.
yeah.
How do you I mean, you haven't had this problem yet, but how do you handle like if you have multiple people ready to swear the ideal at the same time?
So I'm going to find that out in the next chapter, actually, because I have one that's ready to become a truth watcher and one that's ready to become a dustbringer. What I'll probably do is separate it out. So like one of them, he had a really good idea. Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit of metagamey because he's a GM and he's read the adventure, but like it makes sense to me, and I think it'll be a cool narrative hook. So like he brought that to me and was like, feel free to say no, but I have this idea, and I was like, I love the idea, let's roll with it. But I don't see it as an issue as long as your party's cool with it. Like I don't ever want someone to feel like they're overshadowed. But like, I don't have some kind of hard and fast rule where it's like you can only swear only one person per session. Like, nah. Like, if we have 2 do it in the middle of combat, like it'll make the combat easier. But who cares? It's cool. It's fun. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think as long as the players and the party's on board and nobody's going to feel overshadowed, then I think that's cool.
Legit. Yeah, I like it.
What about you?
I am so far from having any of my players swear the ideals.
It's fair.
I'm gonna have to like I had them take the Radiant quiz just to see like because none of them are book readers except for Nikki. Just to see like what they think of it and then what ones they personally align with. And then I'm going to like they've all said like, yeah, I want you to assign me my like spren. Like tell me what magic I can use. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, we'll need a couple sessions for me to get a feel for their characters. I do have one that I'm like, okay, he feels very truth watchery already. So
it has been interesting seeing how players interpret the ideals. Because like I have one player who is like getting angry at the existing truth watchers because like we're doing stonewalkers, so like he's recognizing where Yilt is starting to veer. But it is interesting because I'm like, oh, but the Yilt 100% believes he's right in what he sees as the ideal. So I find that mechanic interesting where, because I had actually posed to that player too, the way he was acting before we got to a certain point in the adventure. He was actually acting more Skybreakery because it was much more about like rules, regulations, like how things are supposed to be, versus the truth of it and the truth behind it. When me and him had a check-in after a session, he was like, I'd never really thought about it that way, but I kind of like that. He's like, but I want to stick with Truth Watcher, and I'm like, totally cool with me, but I did just want to put that out there to you that like you could interpret the truth in 2 very different directions with those orders right now. Now the way he took it falls in line a little more with like finding the truth behind things, finding the real truth behind. So like he got to where he wanted to, but it was interesting because he could have taken one pivot and become a Skybreaker instead.
that is very fair. Yeah, but I think that's all for us, folks. And remember, this episode is sponsored by Jones Soda, the official soda of the Cosmere RPG. No, it's not. None of that is true. It's just a fine soda brand that does nerdy collabs. Not yet with Cosmere, but maybe. Maybe we'll get some sapphire wine. But that's all from us. Kyle, would you take us away?
Absolutely. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell so the Storm Wardens alert when episodes are coming out. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your audio. But until next time, let's roll the plot die and raise the stakes. This has been Complicated Opportunities.
Woo!